Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the New to Wrestling Podcast After Dark. If you're new here, so am I. I am Kelsey. I'm the new in New to Wrestling. This is my best friend and fellow hag, Xavier. He is the not so new in New to Wrestling. He is my guide, the one who holds the lantern and shows me the way. We're back.
We're
We've
back.
been talking about this for a minute. We knew it was coming. The highly anticipated with fear and ferocity, the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix.
Okay.
We're gonna get
Wild.
into it, and we're gonna do things a little bit differently tonight. We normally will do a whole play-by-play of each episode, but girl, the tea is hot. Xavier and I, spur of the moment, decided to binge watch the
All of it.
entire thing in one sitting, as I'm sure a lot of you did. So we want you to, we're just going to kiki about it. We're just going to talk about it, highlights, moments, just initial first reactions. And if we decide that there's a lot of material here and we might go back and revisit certain episodes and really dive in. But tonight we're just going to chit chat.
We're just gonna
Um,
chit chat.
we're just going to chit chat. And we highly encourage you to pause at this time. Go get
Hmm.
yourself a little drink, a little snack. I'm literally eating dinner. We're going to like just hang out. I know Xavier has chips. We're going to like hang out, talk, snack,
Hold
and
on, hold on.
just
I'm gonna open my Red Bull.
I didn't even hear it.
Oh, that's fun. I heard it.
You did? Okay, great. Maybe it came through you, but sometimes I make like the popping noise with like I do like
Oh yeah, it
I hear
doesn't
it
show
and
up.
you don't. Yeah, it's so
Hmm.
weird. So I wonder if it was that,
Maybe.
but get your drinks, get your snacks, get cozy, and we're just gonna it's gonna be two friends talking about the absolute madness that was the Mr. McMahon documentary. And please be patient with us. This might be a little bit of a longer one. We're condensing 6 hours into one conversation, 6 hours of
Hmm.
content into one conversation. Um, and let's get into it. I was up until 3 in the morning last night watching this because I got home from work late. And I was texting Xavier and I was like, I know that we try and save some of the stuff for when we get together on the show, but like some of the
There's too
stuff
much.
literally outraged me. And I was warned and I had to, but I still had to watch. I got spoiled to a lot of
Hmm.
things.
Yes, we did. I knew it was going to happen.
God, yeah.
But I knew that this documentary was too of the moment to not watch it. I
We
think
had to watch it.
so. You win some battles, you lose some battles, but we
Yeah.
definitely had to watch this.
Oh my God. And it's so funny. Xavier brought up such a good point that just by coincidence and like Xavier's just incredible intuition, like knowing what to watch, most of the after darks that we did like prepared me to see a lot of the behind the scenes of stuff that they covered. So like
Correct.
things like, the Chris Benoit of it all, like
The
what happened with
steroid
Owen Hart, the
trial.
steroid trials. Yes. Like we didn't watch the Owen Hart After Dark or Dark Side of the Ring episode yet, but I knew that that was going to happen. Like
Hmm.
I felt weirdly prepared. And also, special shout out to my roommate Crystal, who watched basically she stayed until 3 in the morning with me. She got sucked in at
Love
somewhere
that.
around episode 3.
I got my roommates
And
to watch the last one with me, because
well,
I had watched most of it before they had gotten home, and then
mhm,
um, I was just like, "This is crazy. Do you want me
you
to put
have
this
to
on the
see
big
it.
TV because you are not prepared?"
The tea is crazy, and I will be rewatching, especially the last two episodes, which covers the family and then like a lot of the current stuff that's going on.
Right, because I feel like this
Gotta,
documentary started out very different, or at least, you know what I mean. It was supposed to be about Mr. McMahon, kind of like generally, but I
yes,
feel like because, so during the filming of this documentary, all of the most recent allegations against Mr. McMahon like came to light, and then he was kind of pushed out of WWE TKO. He's been kind of just reclusing it pretty much since, so much so that he declined to actually finish the interviews for this documentary.
right.
So,
Yeah, so if you guys don't know, which I'm sure that you do, but if you don't know, if you're new here like me, the premise of this, when they open the documentary, it literally says beginning in 2021, over 100 hours of interviews were filmed with Vince McMahon, his family, business associates, and some of WWE's most popular stars. But then, like Xavier said, the allegations came out. So this was not intended to be
The expose
like
of
yes, but it almost was because when you they
hmm
get into the end and when they talk to Bruce Pritchard, which I'm sure you guys know that is if you're not new to wrestling, a very familiar name to all of you. But when they talk to Bruce at the end and he's like, "Yeah, I watched some of the episodes and this is not like the Vince McMahon documentary I thought it was going to be. Like this is a
hmm
witch hunt, a blah blah blah." So it's like I feel
right.
like the allegations just like lended itself to what it was going to be almost anyway, where it's like
Well,
Mr.
not for
McMahon.
nothing, but you can't have the history that you have being sued this many times and think that nobody's going to be like, um, can we all look at this in one shot? Because seeing it all like
In
back to
one
back to back to back to back to back to back, you're like, wow, wow,
yeah.
this man is got some issues, got some
Issues,
issues.
issues. And I will say that he told on himself a lot just by what he says,
Yeah,
how he says it, his relationships with other people. Not even, I'm not even talking about like sexual relationships. I
no,
mean, just
just
like his
work
friendships,
relationships, his
his
friendships.
with his children. The relationship he had with his children, I think, disturbed me the most. Like, really freaked me out. But
The way, like, and it was very much the way Shane talked about getting respect from his father,
no,
the way that that was just a,
cry for help.
well, that, but also exactly what Vince's father did to him,
Yes.
just being so withholding of praise, love, pride, whatever, that at 45 years old, this man is throwing himself off of cages and like doing all this crazy
Like,
stuff just to get a hug and a pat on the back from his father. So crazy.
no, really. And he so genuinely the way he was talking about it, like it was as if like there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Like Crystal and I were like
This is
I
not
like it
right.
made me emotional. I was like he literally doesn't understand that this is like extremely toxic. Like
Right.
this is just like not a good thing that you
Situation.
literally are putting and I'm gonna say something, and this is like allegedly, like how just the vibe I got was like it's almost like he literally didn't care if he lived or died. Like if he was like, if I died doing this, then I'd have my dad's respect, like for real. Because he was doing such crazy stunts that he didn't even and when you looked at him when he was about to like fall off like the top of the cage, and it's like however many crazy feet up and he
Right.
just like falls backwards, by the way.
Hmm.
Like it's almost like he literally did not care if he lived or died. Like the look
Yeah.
on his face, so dead. It just really
Yeah.
freaked me out. And I again, new to wrestling, I have not seen any of that yet with Shane and the McMahons. We're like just
Hmm.
getting into that era. If you guys are, like I said, new here, our other show, we're going through Monday Night Raw, and we're in like right before the Attitude Era
We are like,
really kicks
right. We
off.
are in the summer of 97. So
Yeah. And
we're
it's
we're about to
crazy.
be in the thick of it.
Yes, because Triple H was like, if you actually watch Raw, and I was like, us, you'll notice it was little things over time because people think it was like this one big random switch and suddenly it was the Attitude Era. It was a lot of little things over time. And
Hmm.
we've been saying this. Like we've
Right.
been watching it, and it's like it's all these little like pushing the envelope that one day is like the envelope's just gonna bust open. But
Right. Hmm.
um
Hmm.
the literal so I just wrote down some quotes. So the episode one is called Junior. One of the things that like literally is such a precursor to this entire thing was Vince literally says at one point, I wish I could give you some of the real stories. Holy shit. And
Right.
they're like, no, give us one. He goes, oh, no, no, no. I don't want anyone to really know me.
Right. Which is
He
crazy
is,
considering you're sitting down to do a documentary about you. And then he goes on to say something along the lines of like, I'll give you enough to make it interesting. And it's just like this man is such a control freak in the way that he is presented that like in an like documentary like interview setting where these people are literally digging up his entire life, he's
yep.
still adamant about I'm in control of the narrative that I'm presenting and nobody else is, which is crazy.
He is like a true blue sociopath.
Yeah, it was
Like
nuts.
where he believes, and I could be mixing up the definition of sociopath with psychopath, but whatever. Like where he literally just is like he is in control of his image and what he does has nothing to do with who he actually is. It's just about his image. Like
Right.
how he comes across. Like it doesn't matter what he actually does. It's like I don't know.
It's
It
the
just
way,
was
and he
so
goes into it like later about like perception and how like perception
yes.
is reality.
Which
And
is not
wrong,
untrue, but
but the
it's the
way
way
he goes
you
about it is
yes.
is just crazy.
There
And
were
this
parts I was just like,
you said that. You're on camera.
that's what I'm saying. He told on himself a lot and he doesn't even realize. Like, but
We
go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say we get very like very brief into Vince's like childhood. All we
Yeah,
really know is that it was bad.
really
Um,
bad.
he grew up like apparently really dirt poor. He was apparently physically abused by his stepfather. He never met his real father until the age of 12. And
Crazy.
then apparently it was alluded to that he was sexually abused by his mother. So like
Which we
crazy.
did not find out till in the later episodes. They like
Right.
randomly mentioned, oh, and there, I shit you not. And I'm sorry, I know we have a trigger warning in the intro, but trigger warning, there's going to be sexual assault, discussions, violence, all of that.
Hmm.
But I literally said, I was out loud. I was like, I just feel like the way that he is, the power, the control. I was like, I feel like he's been sexually assaulted. Like the way that he acts, the way that he portrays women on the show, the way that he even portrays like men on the show with this like power, this like gotta be juice, gotta be huge, gotta be in control, whatever.
Right.
I was like, I really feel like there's like must be a sexual assault element. And then later, when they were like, he was potentially sexually assaulted by his mother
Right.
is
Crazy.
so psychotic and you
Hmm.
see it like play out when they talk about like the Linda and Vince of it and it's like this idea in his head where he could like drug the mother figure into being inert and useless and then
Right.
he is like the domineering controlling I'm powerful I can have sex with whoever I want I'm having an affair right in front of her this like sees
Right.
it's so like Oedipus complexy. Like
Hmm.
it's very,
Very
very
interesting.
twisted.
Yeah, and
Very twisted.
the way that like it, especially like through this lens, now looks like he set in motion things on the show to like satisfy those kind of
Yes.
psychological like needs, quote unquote.
Yes. It's
Um,
almost like he was acting out like those crazy like therapy things. Like when people have to do like when they do certain types of therapy and it's like you have to like be in like act out certain like revenge plots in your
right.
head to like move on. It like that's kind of how it felt. Like this literally
Hmm.
the world's a stage. And I think he says at one point like I was always meant to be a performer. I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to like act out these
Right.
things happening in my life. I mean, they all mention several times, many times that most of the storylines within the show were influenced by something that happened in real life that they just like turned up the volume on.
Right.
So again, it's like they kind of told on themselves. It's like he's having women like get on their hands and knees and bark like a dog. Like it's I'm like there's
Hmm.
things you can just see it. Like I just don't know how anyone could not believe this, even if you want to say it's a spin, if you want to say they cherry picked, if that you want to say they only
There's a
highlighted the
lot of
worst parts
examples
of
to
it.
be cherry picking. Let's just put it
Cherry
that
pick
way. This is
I
a long continued pattern of behavior for them to be wiling out and saying that like it was like a crusade or like a witch hunt. And mind you, Vince McMahon, the day before this gets released, puts out a statement basically just being like, oh, like they, through the power of editing, like made me look bad, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, dude, you made you look bad. You have a
no, period.
history that is
Period.
long enough that we can all look back at it now and be like, you're not a good person. Like,
Yes.
so
And someone says
insane.
it at the end, and I know we're like jumping all over the place, but someone
But
says
that's
it
all
at
right.
the end. I think it's Schumacher or Shoemaker, where he says, like, two things can be true at once. And we say this all the
All
time.
the time.
Two things can be true at once is like, yes, did he give us the age of some of the greatest wrestling
Right.
of
He
all
gave us
time?
like
Of
the greatest
course.
circus of all time. But
Absolutely. But he like was also the ringmaster. And like there's a reason like circuses aren't as popular as they used to be because there's a lot
right.
of like trauma there. But
Right.
some other highlights, what do I have from the first episode? Oh, like the whole Oh, I loved this quote from Tony Atlas. He was like one of the realest people on this show, this episode.
He was
Tony
very honest.
Atlas, Phil Mushnick, you will always be famous to me, baby. You will
Hmm.
always be famous to me. Um,
His name comes up in the steroid trial episode, if you guys are curious as to why we're so hype
oh
about it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love him so much, and we'll get there. But like Tony Atlas says, wrestling is an imitation of the world. If you want to know what America is like, watch wrestling. We show you yourself. Because I guess at this point they were talking about how like foreigners were always the villains. Like they're
Yeah,
talking,
and
which was
we've
so
discussed that back in the
we
day. Yeah.
have discussed this, but like the whole thing with the Iron Sheik, like and the conflict in Iran, and like when they had Sergeant Slaughter turn
Be like a
into
representative of so nuts. So nuts.
so crazy. I mean,
Hmm.
so crazy. I didn't know that they did this like talk show thing
Hmm.
like with Vince McMahon. I already forget what it was called, but that whole talk show thing is so like crazy. I kind of love the concept of it. Again, like I'm not trying to praise Vince McMahon. I love the idea of it. I think it's
Right.
funny and I think it's interesting.
And I
But I
think,
didn't know that was like a
wrestling
thing.
characters lend themselves to that. You know what I mean? It's like you're basically just giving them the opportunity to do promos in interview form.
Yes, and it's at that time was like I feel like the age of late night. Like
Yes.
maybe not quite, but it was like I mean late night used to be a huge like the late who you watched for late night shows, what you like that
Hmm.
was a huge thing
Still
because
is
like
to me. I mean, I still watch Stephen Colbert's monologue every day.
do you?
Hmm.
I
Every
mean I
single day.
love Steven.
Hmm.
He lives where I live, so
I know. I love that. I love that
my
man.
my homie. This whole thing wait. Oh my God. Okay, speaking of family trauma. So in the first episode, like I said, it's called Junior. It's all about like Vince McMahon Sr. at the time, it was the territories, and Vince McMahon Jr. was the one that basically he was a colonizer. He was a wrestling colonizer. He like took over the other territories, got the talent, la la la, which it's actually really funny that later
When
he
WCW does it to him,
yes.
he like flips the narrative real hard. He's like, "You're coming
And he
after a
literally
family business," and they
and
literally
I
ask him, and they ask him. I was like, "Do you not see the similarities between what you did and what Bischoff and Turner did?" And he's like, "No, no, no. Like I went to go in there and compete. I didn't go in there to like hurt the competition." I'm like, "You went in, bribed all of their top talent with more money. Same thing WCW did.
yep.
Took all their talent, the top talent, so that you made them want to work in New York, and you get enough of them, everyone's going to follow suit. Why? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's the same. You did the same thing.
Same formula. And it's funny, he says something super psychotic when they ask him that question. And we'll get to it. But he says something like, oh, no, no, sometimes the things actually feel in my head are not the things I say out loud. Like as a business person, sometimes you just have to say something, even if you don't mean it. Like he said something really psycho.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like nobody edited that together and made you say that. Like nobody, like, you
Right.
just said that. You just said like, yeah, no, I lie all the time and just say shit because
I
that's
need to
as a
say something.
business, I need to say something. So literally he said like when they're like, okay, so you really don't see the similarities? He goes, no, you're not understanding me. Like, yeah, of course I do. I'm just telling you I don't because that's business. Like that's basically what he said. Like it was so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He is such
The
like a
mental gymnastics.
gaslighter, like a master manipulator. And he's
Yeah.
literally telling you, he's like, I am saying that to make you think that that's how I feel when I
Right.
don't. And I
Right.
was like, what? Like What?
Crazy.
Okay.
Absolute
That's
insanity.
crazy. But the other thing I want to mention from the first episode was the John Stossel incident where that reporter which okay. So this incident was basically like a reporter, John Stossel, he was trying to like air out wrestling. He was trying to like come in and be like, sorry to tell the fans it's fake. And we've said this before. If you want to go into a wrestler's into their job and then say their job is fake, you might deserve to get hit. I'm sorry. I
Right.
said it. I said it because how dare that is horrible and rude and just not okay. And like,
Right.
so basically, John Stossel's going around going like, okay, but is it fake? Is it, do you use razor blades to cut your head? Like, la la la. And
Hmm.
maybe not quite so flippantly, but you guys get the
Right.
idea. And I Tony Atlas said that Vince McMahon went into the locker room and he didn't say like somebody beat the shit out of that guy, but he was like, I wish somebody would take care of that guy. Somebody
Yeah.
maybe in this room could do
Hmm.
something about that
Absolutely.
guy.
So crazy. And like that's the
Yes.
thing. And like those are the like that's how much power he had. You know what I mean? That like
Yes.
all of these people were just like, oh yeah, 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 totally. And like I understand like from a especially in the time that they were in, protecting the business was numero uno.
Yes.
That
Oh yeah.
was the modus operandi right there. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was so I understand how easy that must have been for him to just kind of like walk in and have somebody like take up arms, but
Yeah.
like it's still a very crazy thing to do. Like it's still
On
crazy to just be
TV.
like, I just somebody any of these, 6 foot plus 300 pound and if anybody wants to just do anything about that, I didn't see
No, period.
it.
No beer. And like I yeah, basically David, the wrestler named David Schultz, like slaps the fuck out of him. Oh, sorry, I really cursed. Slaps the
It's
shit
okay.
out of him. And like really, and this guy like runs for his life, by the way.
Hmm.
And Tony Atlas like, no, we all celebrated him when they asked Tony Atlas, like, do you think he was like trying to protect the wrestler? I guess because he, the case like I think he tries to sue, but it doesn't really go anywhere. I don't remember. But basically he's like, no, he
No,
wasn't
they
trying to
settled
protect. Oh, they settle. Okay, yeah.
at the
Well,
end
a
of
lot
the
of people
episode.
do.
At the end of the episode,
They
it's
said the thing that they
here's
settle.
that.
Okay.
Hmm.
Because that also happened with Richard Belzer, which
Correct.
this pissed me off, I'm not gonna lie. Like how like Richard Belzer asks Hulk to put a wrestling move on him. He does it and then gets injured and then sues Hulk for injuring him. But you asked. You were like,
Right.
yeah, put a move on me because it's fake. Like, I don't believe in it. And Hulk is like, it's kind of hard when you're sitting there and someone's telling you your job is fake. And then makes you he has you put a wrestling move on him. And then it goes
Hmm.
badly. And somehow, like, you're sued. Like, I kind of agree that that's stupid.
No, I agree. Especially because
I'd be like,
like
eggs on my face. I made a mistake. I'm an idiot. Like, I'm so sorry.
yeah,
He
but
was
I
like,
think it
I
was
sued
just because
Hulk.
it like I don't know, maybe because it was like a TV personality, he had to like save face or
I
whatever.
guess.
But when he gets dropped, his head hits the floor and he's like bleeding. Like
Bad.
it was a not a
No, it
not like
wasn't. It was
a
bad.
yeah, it was not nothing. So I
No,
can
it wasn't. But
but like you asked.
you act like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been like, well, eggs on my face. Like I that was really stupid of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a little something called pride. Not really. But they talk about the first WrestleMania, which was a huge success. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess like those like cases had come on the heels or like the precursor to WrestleMania, and they like talked about how despite all of that, WrestleMania was a huge success.
Correct.
Episode 2 was called Heat. Oh, this was crazy. I just want to say again, people just love to tell themselves Hulk Hogan is a narc. Never liked him. I know what he did for wrestling, whatever, but I guess wrestlers were complaining that they were literally working basically they had to work 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. It was like just ungodly conditions.
Yeah, it was
And there was
exploitation. That's exactly what it
absolutely.
is. It's capitalistic exploitation. So it's hi, these are my workers. I'm going to use them for every drop of sweat that they could possibly give me, and then I'm going to toss them aside.
And there are no because no one is paying attention to the sport. It's just that's just the way it is. That's just how it goes. Like this is just how we do it. Like and No one is paying. There's no regulations. There's
Hmm.
literally nothing in place to protect these wrestlers. And we've talked about this on the show before and whatever. But like, so there was somebody, Jesse the Body Ventura, tried to unionize the wrestling industry. And
Correct.
Hulk Hogan literally admits, he goes, "No, I went to Vince and I told on them. I
Yeah.
said, they're trying to unionize and they're going to walk out of Madison Square Garden and they're going to really embarrass you. So you better do something about it."
Right.
And literally it aired me out. Every wrestler they interviewed, which there was like Bret Hart, Tony Atlas, like there were so many people, and they were all like, "Yeah, Hulk Hogan narked. He's a rat. He's a
Right.
what?" Like all of them were like, "No, no, he blew the doors off that for no reason other than to
Right.
continue being in the boss's pocket."
And that
But
ruined the relationship between Jesse the Body Ventura and Vince. So much
yep,
so that Jesse only returned this year because Vince was gone. Yeah.
girl, and it's
Jesse was a
crazy.
wrestler. He was part of a legendary commentary team for like the for so long. It was him and Gorilla Monsoon. They were on commentary
Oh,
forever together. And that basically ruins their relationship. And then so much so, like Vince badmouths Jesse the rest of, the rest of the time. Like anytime Jesse's name is brought up, Vince is all over it, badmouth. If Vince is very much like that, though. Vince is very much like
yes.
you cross me, you're dead until you come back to me.
And it's like you're like a joke. I'm like, Jesse, right?
Right.
Like he's so like flippant. It's so gross to me.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, since you brought up Gorilla Monsoon, I want to also quickly mention I did not know that Gorilla Monsoon like
The
gunning
co-owner.
was trying to have like just sole ownership of WWE before Vince Jr. came into the picture. And
Correct.
Vince Jr., the way he acquires the company is so crazy. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to pay for it in
He
X
paid for
amount of
it in
payments,
installments.
installments." And he goes, "If I ever miss one payment, you keep the money and the business."
Hmm.
And they literally like, "Sure." And I think at one point he's like, speaking of daddy issues, he's like, "Do you think your dad wanted you to succeed?" And he's like, um, yeah, no, I think so. And then like I think Tony Atlas is like, he literally tried so hard to sabotage his own son at every turn. Like
Right.
he was a joke, like wanted to sabotage him at every turn. And I just remember too, he didn't say to Vince, he only said "I love you" one time, and it was the day before he died,
Correct.
his dad.
Crazy.
Never hugged him one time. It was like so twisted. And again, I've said this is how evil begets evil. And I want to say this and not to like get on a preachy like soapbox or high horse, but like we talk about so much about how like the patriarchy affects women, and it does, but it actually also really affects men. You
Hmm.
guys don't you some of you guys are not clocking this, but it's actually really destroying a lot of you as well.
Hmm.
Sorry. Like it is. Like this is whatever.
This is
That's
toxic for everybody.
it's bad for everyone, for literally everyone, and actually especially you.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna leave it at that.
Right. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
crazy. Um,
So
they
crazy.
there was the
They go into like WrestleMania like two and
yeah,
three.
yep,
Hogan versus Andre. They made it sound like it was, the first time. Very much so was not. The Vince had to literally bribe Andre with paying for a surgery that Andre
his
didn't really
back
want to get.
surgery. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Literally rolled up on the set of The Princess Bride and was like, "Hey,
Crazy.
isn't that so nuts?" Um, and was like,
Like,
"Hey,
girl.
can you want to do this?" And I love this. I love this because everybody that was interviewed that worked for WWE at the time, they were like 93,000 people, 93,000 people,
Yes.
93,000 people.
This
And
was so
then
funny.
Meltzer comes in
I
and it's
love
like
Dave Meltzer.
he's like he's like they all say 93,000 so often that they all believe it. Like they all think that that is fact when you can actually go and look at it and it was actually 78,000 people. So crazy. I love it because like they literally did like a little cut like a quick little edit. It was Vince 93,000, Hulk 93
Well, Hulk
173
Hulk
and
did like specific to the digit, and I was like, Hulk, you don't even know that. Like, you're
right.
crazy for that.
So funny. So
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 funny.
funny.
Whoever did the editing on this was, it
A1.
was, they had a lot of those moments, but it wasn't overdone.
Mm-hmm.
Where it like quick cut, like a lot of similarities, what people were saying, and then someone would be like, yeah, that didn't happen
Right. Love that.
at all. They just
Love
believe
that.
that.
Love that.
And Schumacher actually says nothing that any wrestler or anyone involved in wrestling tells you should be regarded as fact, which
Isn't that
is
crazy?
hysterical. And he's like, he works, I think, for the Wall Street Journal. And he was just so like, he was one of my favorite people too. I love people that can be like really cut and dry like that. Like just like, no, that's not the truth. And
Mm-hmm.
Tony Atlas said every word out of Hulk's mouth was Vince talking.
Mm-hmm.
And Hulk even says he
It was
was a
all Vince.
mouthpiece. It was all Vince. He was just a mouthpiece. Like, and I think Stephanie McMahon at one point is like, sometimes I get mad because everyone gives Hulk the credit and it like bothers me. But it was like, it was my dad. My dad was the mastermind behind all of it. And,
Mm-hmm.
mastermind being the apropos word. But um then they get into like the steroid trials. I wrote, I love the beef between Phil Mushnick and the WWE so much I don't even care.
No,
And they're
literally
like,
love it.
and Vince is like, I don't know why he came after me so hard, like blah blah blah. And they just cut to Phil Mushnick and he goes, because he's a dirtbag.
Right.
He always knew. He always knew. Okay, there's a lot of reasons I love Phil Mushnick. Um, but one of his paper quotes, like, because they zoomed in on like some of his like newspaper clippings, and it says like, is it possible that Vince McMahon could be such a could just be a disingenuous creep?
Yeah.
And clocked and read
Blocked.
and like immediately. And I also got they get into the Ring Boy scandal, which was crazy. So like
Yes. So
I don't go ahead.
no, no, no. Just as a for anybody, we're not going to go super in depth on all of these topics. Um,
Yeah.
if you want an in-depth look at the steroid trial, there's an After Dark episode. If you want
Oh,
an
yes.
in-depth look at the Ring Boy scandal, watch the Pat Patterson episode.
Yes.
Just so anybody that is just kind of listening to this one episode doesn't think we're
It's
like
like, what is
glossing over
happening?
things. We go into it a
We've
lot
covered
further
things
on
previously.
separate episodes. But continue.
Yeah, and if you guys do want us to deep dive more on these episodes,
Let us
trust and
know.
believe we would. We
We
absolutely
absolutely
will
would.
if you really want us to go play by play, especially for those of you who don't have Netflix. So Netflixalina. But they go into the Ring Boy scandal, which I actually we like you said, we talked a little bit about this on the Pat Patterson episode, but this is what really got me is that so Bruce Pritchard claims that Pat was accused because of the rampant homophobia at the time, which we did kind of discuss could be a possibility. It's like people were really willing to blame gay people for a lot of fucking shit. Sorry.
Right.
And apparently, allegedly, Vince went to Dave Meltzer and said that
Mm-hmm.
there was at least one innocent person who was accused out of the three, it was like Mel Phillips and Terry Garvin were the other people accused,
Right.
which there's a lot of things, and he's saying Pat Patterson was the innocent person. There's a lot of things that really disturb me about that, and one of them is the fact that, okay, so you're admitting that the other two people are guilty.
And you
That
knew.
you knew. You are telling Dave, okay, one of them is innocent, which means two of them are not. And you
Correct.
know.
Correct.
And then, which was so crazy, again, the immediate cut was they immediately cut to Tony Atlas saying that they all knew Pat did it. They
Right.
all knew he did it. They all knew he was involved. And because Pat would just grab his genitals all the time without asking, would just go into the locker room and just like grab people's like
Mm-hmm.
genitals.
And then the interviewer was like, "Did you ever say anything?" And he's like, "To who?"
To who?
He was like, he's the booker. He's number two. He's like, "So why didn't you go to Vince?" And then he just laughs.
Laughs.
Laughs. Just
Laughs.
like he's like and then he goes on to say there was no one to go to. Like
He says, you either take it or you go home. He needed Pat more than he needed any of us.
crazy.
Scary.
Mm-hmm.
So scary. And like, again, men are suffering. Men are suffering a lot too.
Right.
Like, and I'm not trying to be like, whatever, but
And we
that is so dark. I'm
so
sorry.
dark. It's so messed up. And then before that, and this is just very brief, because he has his own Dark Side of the Ring episode. Jimmy Snuka, that incident within the
Oh,
hotel room where a woman
yes.
apparently hit her head and died, and it was apparently like the police thought it was a homicide, but there wasn't enough evidence to like do anything about it, and that is crazy, crazy,
And
crazy.
they say like that they feel that like Vince did something to like keep that quiet.
Hmm.
And that is so scary. And we'll have to watch that episode of After Dark because I didn't know any of that. Like, the
Right.
only experience I have with Jimmy Snuka is they like randomly had him in like on an episode of WWE, like a pay-per-view or something.
Right, 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 right.
And he was old or whatever. But
Hmm.
here's actually what really like again, I love Phil Mushnick, and this actually really like made like reaffirmed how much I love him is when they talk about Rita Marie,
Hmm.
who was, I guess, a female ref at the time.
Hmm.
She was the first female ref, and they were really highlighting her. And the short version is she came out a long time after, so it was outside of the statute of limitations, and said that she was sexually assaulted by Vince. He like forced her to do oral, and then when he couldn't get off, he like, you know, ripped her jeans off, and like it's horrible.
Right.
And Phil Mushnick goes, he's like emotional. And he's like, and they tore her to shreds in the media that she's just some slut that like was trying to go after a billionaire. There's no
No,
way
it's
it could
just
have
straight up
happened.
victim blaming.
And he
Straight up
literally,
victim
yes,
blaming.
absolutely. And he said, he got emotional and was literally like, it people were literally saying that like her story wasn't resonating. And it's like, it's not about
It's
storytelling.
the truth.
It's the truth. And what really got me together, I got so emotional over this, is at the end of the episode. So, and I remember this happening last year, not her case specifically, but this happening in New York, is that in last year in New York, they temporarily lifted the statute of limitations on alleged sexual assault victims, like so that they could come forward. And a lot of it had to do with the church at the time, but
Hmm.
it ended up being beneficial for a lot of people. As soon as that happened, Vince pays her a
Mul-
shit ton of money.
multi-million dollar settlement
Multi-million dollar settlement to Rita.
in
As soon as
2023.
that happened. So it was true. It
And
literally it just
he was admitted because like no one no one that doesn't commit sexual assault brings up the statute of limitations as like a and I'm
period.
sorry, you don't go like, and even if there had been a like a sexual assault, the statute of limitations like was up. So, and then moves
Why would you say that? Like that
like
is psycho.
right, right. And the thing that's
Psycho.
crazy is you're being interviewed and asking about it after the fact. Like, hello, 20 you paid this woman
Uh,
millions of dollars for what? Nothing?
and that's what gags me is like again, why would you why would you pay her if you didn't like, because it's not like she brought it up, like unless I don't know, but either way, it's just like if you were so sure of your innocence, you have a lawyer team that has gotten you out of more than you could possibly
Uh-huh.
not actually be innocent. Like, you know what I'm saying? So what? Because it's true, and that literally curdled my blood. Like
Mm-hmm.
dis disturbing. Again, you tell on yourself, but
Mm-hmm.
so that's how the episode ends. Then episode 3 was the screw job, which was this was the big spoiler for me. So if you watch our regular show, you know that we have not yet gotten to the Montreal screw job, but we are rapidly approaching.
Correct.
Though I will say this is a spoil. I'm actually okay with seeing the back end before I actually see it because then I'll understand what's happening. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because this isn't a thing that's going to be obvious. It's like you're going to be like, wait, I don't
No. If you
understand.
saw it
But
like just
in the
live, it would
moment,
have been a lot of me having to backtrack, which
right. So
is fine because I expected because we will 100% do a whole other After Dark episode just on
thank
the
God.
screw job.
I have to.
Because there are many a documentary, many an interview, lots of stuff going on there.
We have to discuss because I text Xavier in all caps like no,
Mm-hmm.
no, like
Right.
not because you guys, if you guys are not new here, you know how much I love Bret Hart, and like I just feel like
Yeah.
Whatever. So basically, the way that they set it up, on like how like to explain that this is not something out of the realm of possibilities that Vince was capable of, as they talk about Wendy Richter and how Vince literally screwed her out of her title belt, which is so crazy. And basically they give her she didn't want to give up the title belt allegedly, so Vince was like, so we gotta make her give it up. And so they had the ref do a 3 count, even though her shoulders were, she was like not even on the floor.
Right.
It was really
And
crazy.
I do understand a little bit as far as like
Yes, of
being a
course.
promoter and being like, at the end of the day, like I make the decision as far as what happens in the show, like as far as who's the champion, what, that is the owner, the booker, their call. Your job as the
Right.
wrestler is
Be like, no.
not to like make the ending yourself. Like that's not
Yeah.
how that's supposed to go. So I can understand from a like professional standpoint. It was like, if you're not gonna do it, like this is my company. Like you're
They're
gonna
like,
do it. Like
yeah, 100%.
because that is very much just in the wheelhouse of like that is your job. Like if your boss tells you that you're gonna lose the championship, like you're gonna lose the
You're lose the
championship.
championship. No, 100, and I felt the same way. And again, I don't know anything about that situation. They didn't get
Oh, I
super
think it
into
was
it.
like, it's cold. It's certainly cold.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But and then right after they go get into that, that like cuts to Vince and he's like, I don't fight fair. Period.
Right.
Right.
Period. And what was crazy is they also asked him, I have like a quote. They asked him something about like, did you learn anything from like either the steroid trials or like something the federal government was sniffing around about? And all he said was, all I learned was that the federal government sucks.
Right.
And like, yes, but also like, hello? Like,
Hello.
you didn't learn anything at
Right.
all other than, okay.
Okay,
So
good.
anyway,
So crazy.
I also wrote, because then in this episode they're getting into like obviously Hulk Hogan has left because of the steroid trials. Now he's at WCW, and they try and make Lex Luger, the guy, and he just kind of flops. The way they talk about Lex Luger sometimes is like, I like said, sometimes they feel bad about it because they're like, he just was a flop. Like we wanted him to be the it boy, he didn't have it. He just kind of sucked,
Mm-hmm.
which is not true. And we know that he really ends up in some bad waters at some point. But sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
he's just it's always on record that he was a flop, and that kind of sucks. But
Yeah.
they talk about the final night of Razor and Diesel, and on literally like, because it was a live event, it wasn't recorded, they somehow got like shaky 90s video camera footage
The
from a
curtain call.
fan. Amazing, the curtain call, because I've only heard about this in the lore. I've not seen it.
Mm-hmm.
um and this was again like the shot heard around the world, and I did
Yes.
not understand really how serious
This
it
was.
was and what it meant to the business until I saw this. And I know that sounds ignorant, but I just like really couldn't
No, how could you though? Because
conceptualize it.
the way that wrestling is presented today is so vastly different than it was before
Yes.
that incident. That incident kind of
Right.
kickstarts the like, the peeling behind the, oh, like it's okay to let people know that like this is not real. But at the
Right.
time,
Not
that was just it was like blasphemy. Like people were livid, livid.
livid. And I, again, just out of total ignorance, like I did not understand. Like I knew that there was like, again, there's the protecting of the business. Like even though we know, wink, wink, we don't know. And like there's
Right.
this
And then they go
really,
into to talk about like kayfabe and like
yes,
it is the like it's like the agreement between the wrestlers and the audience to kind of like suspend
suspend,
disbelief,
yes.
and kind of enjoy the show for what it is, you know?
Yeah, there was a Triple H quote at the very beginning. It said, it's not people who don't believe, like it's not that people don't know it's real
It's
or
fake,
not
yeah.
real. He is It's people who are smart enough to know it's not real but buy into the characters.
Right.
Is like basically what he says. Is like
Hmm.
where they're at now. But
Right. It's like, you go to like a play, it's like I know that's not real, but you suspend
Right.
you go enjoy it for what it is. It's the same
Period.
thing.
100%. So I now this really like I felt the tabooness of it like
Hmm.
fully like for what it was.
Yeah,
And
Bret Hart
Cody
goes like they
Rhodes,
killed wrestling that
no,
day.
literally go and he is so drama and I love
He's
that.
so drama.
I love Brett, they'll never make me hate you, baby. I know that you've got some demons and that's okay, but like my
Hmm.
God, the drama, the way you are, the way you say things is just so funny to me. But yeah, Cody Rhodes says to anyone my age, it was cool. It was
Right.
so cool. He goes, but to the older generation, it was the cardinal sin. And Undertaker is literally like, yeah, I didn't like it. I did
Right.
not like it. Especially Undertaker, who is literally living his gimmick every minute of every day.
Every
I can
day.
imagine because
Being
he's an
pissed.
Undertaker. It's not like he's a Shawn Michaels where it's like, that's my name and that's who I am. And so even if I'm living it out in real life, it's
You know.
whatever. It's kind of still me. Undertaker is literally the undead trying to go to the gas station. Like
Right. He's out
I can
here.
see
He's
why he
not
would
talking to people.
really,
He's not going to bars. He's like, you
he's
know what I
not
mean?
meeting
He's wearing
people.
all black all the time. Like you know what I mean? Like
And then
when he's
for
out in public, he's like trying to scare fans. Like, and then all of a sudden, like this happens, and you're like,
these four little dickheads just get out there and hug.
right.
And he's like, oh, okay. So like, so
So
I
what am I
get why
doing
he
all
would,
this for? Yeah.
period. So I 100% get it. Um, But Triple said it's crazy. I said to Vince later, it was the biggest moment of the night, so I don't know why I'm being punished. And he goes, I think a change is coming and we need to change with it. And Vince said, yeah, but not today.
Hmm.
And he literally said, direct quote, you're going to have to learn to eat shit and like the taste of it, which we
Yes.
know. Then we're again Monday Night Wars. Eric Bischoff at some point, and at first I was like, ew, of course you would say this, but then it made sense. He says stealing is in the eye of the beholder. And that's
Right.
when it gets into Vince saying, like not understanding that it's basically the same thing. And also we know he did this to ECW. We know he also did that. He
Hmm.
stole from ECW as well. I mean, literally
Yeah,
Stone
but
Cold Steve
at
Austin.
the very least, ECW was compensated and then given WWF screen time.
100%. And I will say,
I
Paul
believe it was
Heyman,
a Paul Heyman. Yeah, he
symbiotic relationship.
well, yeah. Paul Heyman goes it says like Vince always looked at other promotions as feeders for the WWF. Like it was
And how
just
could you not?
not.
I mean, you kind of have to. It's kind of like an actual sports team. It's like
You're drafting.
you're drafting, you're picking, you're like looking at other teams and seeing like maybe we can get like that pitcher, maybe like
Right.
whatever
Hmm.
sports.
Right.
So it makes sense, but this is when Vince says, "What I say is sometimes different than what I think." And I was like, "So you're literally saying you're manipulating people."
Hmm.
Okay. And I thought this was interesting too. Vince never considered turning Hulk into a heel because obviously they talk about how the Hulk heel turn was like one of the greatest moments, blah blah blah.
Right.
Again, we have a whole moment on that with the Monday Night Wars if you guys want to watch it. Um, but I think that's interesting that he never even thought of that.
Considered
Like,
it.
no, Hulk was always supposed to be this good guy, la la la, but he was willing to turn so many other people into heels. I thought it was fascinating.
Hmm.
They talk about the 83 straight weeks, which is so I was gonna say
The
funny, but I don't
way
even know.
the way they cling to that, like, and I get it. It like an accomplishment, sure. Like that is not an easy thing to do. They were really like handedly kicking the WWF's ass, and like I get it, but it is
Yeah.
2024. We are now like third almost 30 years after the fact, and
Yeah.
this man is still riding that 83-week high like that shit happened 2 weeks ago. And it's like, no, baby, 30. There that streak, that like whatever can retire now. Like it's like at
This is
this point,
where, oh my
like
God, it's old enough to retire. It
you've
has
been
it has
working
a
that
wife
long,
and
so
kids.
that line so long that it is tired. It wants to collect Social Security
It's
and
time to
medical.
travel. You don't have
Right.
any responsibilities anymore. It's time to see the world. Like, I
I,
don't, it's so crazy. And the
move
fact
on.
that when he said he had the podcast named 83 Weeks, I was like, I got to go. I've got to go. I gotta go.
Mm,
And this, I'm sorry, he
mess.
had a few really amazing ideas, and I will not take that from him. He did. But then again, they talk about the reason it flopped is because he never came up with any ones beyond that. He just was like, this is the one idea or the few ideas I have. I'm just gonna keep milking them, and then the milk ran dry, sweetie. Like there, and you had
Mm-hmm.
nothing else. You had nothing else. It like Vince McMahon is a psycho, but he literally was fueling the nightmare machine for like
Mm-hmm.
30 years,
Right.
like
Right.
longer. Like
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sorry, like you lost the whatever. I mean, we all know it. We all know how I feel. We all know how Xavier feels. We're there. But then Miss Girl, they get into the Brett and Sean beef, and I love this
Mm.
because it gives. I don't know if this is true, and I meant to ask you, but like, have they reconciled now? Like, are they
They've
okay
had
with
a
each other now?
few. They've had like, yes, they have reconciled.
Okay,
They
because
are.
it
They
gave
are
that
like.
energy.
I don't think they will ever be friends. I don't. You know
You
what I mean?
can't.
But they are very. They're very civil about it.
They're
Also,
mature.
Sean is a very different person now.
Right. He said that. He goes, I was a prick back then.
Right. He
And
was
we
on a
don't talk.
lot of drugs. He was
Yes, I was gonna say
in a
that.
lot on a lot of painkillers. He was a mess. So, and then, he is forced to retire, finds Jesus, starts a family, comes back, very different person.
Right.
Still, I'm just as an amazing a competitor, which is shocking to all when he does come back because we're like,
Of
holy shit, it's been 4 years and he's still that good. Um,
yeah. He has a
but
gift.
truly. And then uh where was I going with this before this? I don't remember.
You were talking about Sean changing. Were you gonna say something about Brett changing? I mean,
It's gone. Doesn't matter. Moving
okay.
on.
I was gonna say this something we don't ever talk about on the regular show, but we mention when we watch the show is like sometimes Sean comes out and I go, "Oh, he's high as a kite right now."
Hmm.
Like he is on drugs. Like sometimes, especially recently, we've clocked it more, and we don't really say it on the regular show, but it's after dark, sweetie. There's sometimes he comes out and I'm like, "Whoa."
Right.
I like you can just tell. Like it's
Hmm.
really crazy. Anyway, so the beef, as we know, was in real life. What Vince says about it is they're like, so what did you, because they obviously put the beef on television and made it real, or made the real beef part of the show. And they're like, what were your thoughts about that beef? He goes, my thoughts at the time were that this was very good for television.
Yep.
Again, crazy. And
Right.
again, not no, like yes, but
Hmm.
also like just the way he says it is like so scary. Um, I literally wrote, and I'm gonna curse again, sorry, but the Montreal Screwjob got me on my fucking knees. I
Don't.
was upset about this.
Right.
I was devastated about
Hmm.
this. Devastated because
And again, I do get it. I do get it.
like do I though? Okay, because here's my thing. I get it. Not wanting to relinquish the title is bad, bad, bad. And they were saying that basically Brett was locked into a contract for that was like 20 years long. Vince was like, it's not working. You don't want to be here. I kind of don't want you to be here anymore either. There's loopholes in your contract. Take those to WCW and negotiate for money, negotiate, like
Right.
gave him tools to leave. And they basically wanted it was like Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels in Montreal. And like Bret was like, I don't want to lose the belt to him and I don't want to do it in Canada. And like I kind of get it. Like if you really hate that person, like for all that they are, whatever. And also it's like they're literally we've just talked about this on the normal show. I'm gonna side with you in the end.
Mhm.
Just let me get there. I Xavier, if you're not watching, Xavier's making a face like Miss Girl. He's still a contractually obligated employee. But I but I it's they're because they're riding the Canada thing. They're riding the
Hmm.
Canada train right now. We just talked about this on the other show, and it's so annoying. But also, Shawn Michaels was your opponent, like, was the person you were in beef with at the time. It doesn't make sense for you to lose the belt to anybody else. Like, so I
Correct.
get why they had to do it that way, but also, like, to the way it went down is so filth. And I
Is
know that you
so
guys
filth.
know I don't
Yeah.
have to, if you are new to wrestling, basically, they like, to add insult to injury, they have Shawn Michaels put Bret Hart in Bret Hart's finisher, which is just foul,
Hmm.
and said he Bret Hart tapped out of a sharpshooter. You got me messed up. I was on that couch fighting for my life, praying to
Hmm.
Jesus. I was
I
like,
get it.
you cannot be serious.
Hmm.
And then Shawn Michaels, they lies. Bret's like, did you know about this? And he's like, I swear on my life I didn't know about this. Yes, you did.
Vince told
And
him and
I
Triple H
know,
to lie. He said, do not. He's like,
don't
you
you
lied
dare.
to everyone's face. I was like, you say it was my decision to the end. He's like, you don't say anything. And
But you
again,
had
when your boss has that kind of control, as we know he
oh my
does,
I,
yeah.
it's crazy. And when Julie is in the back, girl, and she points in Triple H's face and goes, God is gonna strike you down. I
Hmm.
felt that in my soul, and I was like, Julie, I know they're
Uh-huh.
not together anymore, but like,
Wow.
God, she had that really scary, like quiet ferocity that I believe she was a witch that put a curse on him.
I get that.
God is gonna strike you down, and period, Julie. And then Brett, punch it, live. Brett punches Vince's mother effing lights out. Literally
Yes.
knocks him out cold. Undertaker's like, I don't even know how he got the shot in, but we were all like, okay,
Right.
work. And Vince claims, and he was like, this was my one solid for Brett. I was gonna go in and let him punch me so he could get
That is
girl.
just straight machismo talking.
You are such a the lies. I'm sorry. There ain't
Right.
no way. And if you really wanted that to happen, he said he came in with all these people. Again, that's why they were shocked that Brett even got the hit in. And Brett says he got in like under
Hmm.
his arm or whatever and like literally knocked him out cold, starfish on the ground, messed up. And Julie again, Brett's like, "Yep, knocked him out." And Julie's like, "I'm proud of you."
Hmm.
And amen and period, Julie. Seriously. I'm sorry. I went into this one a little bit because it really took me off guard. I did not know this was how it went down.
Hmm.
Vince says, I don't regret any of it. They're like, any regrets? He goes, no, no regrets. Uh,
I yeah,
and
I get it.
Vince's
You cannot. They have already had people take WWE. The reason there's no women's division is because the women's champion at the time jumped ship and then dumped the title in
the
the
belt.
garbage can.
Yeah,
Like he wasn't gonna let that happen again with his prized title, like the
the
title.
belt.
He wasn't gonna do it. And not for nothing, you're an employee. It doesn't matter what you
I
want. It
know, but it's
doesn't
just like
matter.
I just think too much about like who they are as people,
Yeah,
as
and
we
I
should a little bit. But
right.
like to me, Bret Hart always had this like, and this could be just again like the character and the person just fusing in my brain, but it's just like I just don't I think he had such a strong moral compass deep down. I don't think he would have done that, like taken the belt to WCW. Like I know he was like really in a bad
He
place,
wanted to
like
drop it the next night on Raw.
uh which so what's the problem with that? Like I get because
So
it's a
what's the problem is people paid for a pay-per-view that is people paid for. Raw is free. People spent money to go to this show. People spent money to buy the show and have it streamed into their homes. You better deliver. I'm sorry, like
oh
you're an employee. It sucks. It
no,
absolutely
you're
sucks.
right because
And the way it was they made it the most shitty that they possibly could have for Brett. They made
yeah,
it
they
hurt
did.
the most. And
Yeah.
that I will forever be like, the way you did it is shitty, but I don't blame him for doing it.
Yeah. And you're so real for that. I
I
hate when
know.
we fight.
Because
I'm just
I
kidding.
don't want to defend Vince McMahon ever,
No, I
but
know, and I
as
know that you're
a
right because if it's like we had this crazy fight on the pay-per-view and then to lose it on Raw, that also is kind of like that hurts your credit also.
right.
So I do understand. It just really I knew nothing about this. You should have
Hmm.
seen me on that couch. You
I
should have
know.
seen me
I know. This is
fighting
the
for my
first time.
life.
There's a lot there's a lot of emotion you have to get through before you can like let me think about this a little bit.
I'm literally like all the pieces are still the threads are still like weaving themselves
Hmm.
into the blanket that I will cover myself in tonight. I just like really was like so Woo, it was crazy. Anyway, I wrote also to the quote, I can use this as business is Vince's life slogan. He said that a lot, where it's like he
Yeah.
sees a story, I'm gonna use this as business. He sees his life, I'm gonna use this as business, la la
Hmm.
la. Like crazy.
Yeah. And he
Um,
essentially uses the heat from the Bret Hart, the screw job to become Mr. McMahon.
Mr. McMahon. So it's
So
like really coming. We're like really almost there.
we're
I'm
really here. Yeah.
so scared. So yeah, they talk about getting into the Attitude Era, which is where we're at in the regular show. Vince talks about how he loved getting heat. He loved being hated. And it
Hmm.
seems like in real life also. Um, and it's so funny because this is they kind of end the episode. Well, not end the episode, but they get into how like everyone says again, it's the harsh cut of the editing. He
Hmm.
goes like, because Vince is like, yeah, everyone thinks that like I am Mr. McMahon, but I'm not. It's just a character, whatever. And then every person was like, no, that's him. That's really him.
That's him. Yeah.
That's him. Chris
Right.
Jericho, like everybody. No, that's really him.
Yeah. No,
And
fully.
even Bruce Pritchard, who in the end is like gung ho praise Vince, is still even like, oh no, I've seen Mr.
Listen,
McMahon
I
and
wouldn't
that's
be
him.
surprised if you find Bruce Pritchard like living under Vince McMahon's like testicles. So let's take everything that Bruce Pritchard says with a grain of
I
salt because
I
there's no way you're number two for that long and you don't know shit. Don't
uh
even.
period. And you better act accordingly because I'm telling you, and again,
Because you're
willful
next, baby.
ignorance.
I'm so
You're
sorry.
next. I said that last night we were watching. I was like, you are next, and the willful ignorance disgusts me.
Hmm.
It's either you knew and you didn't say anything or you chose not to know because there's no way you're with him
This often,
almost every day of your life and you don't know what's happening.
right.
And willful ignorance is my least favorite type of bitch.
Right, 100%. And then like he goes into at the end tells this like story about like how Vince McMahon like paid for his wife's like I was like, "Yeah, you have all his secrets. He's gonna take care of you." Like,
Here and period. Like he's not gonna be like because I don't know who Bruce Pritchard is, Mama. He could be blackmailing Vince. Like, listen, I know a lot of dark shit. You better take care of my wife
right.
and like go for it. Also, alleged. I made that up. Like, let's
No,
not.
obviously we're
Please
not.
don't
Yeah,
come
yeah.
for me. But like, I'm just saying, like, I don't know what goes on in that place.
Right. No,
Whatever.
clearly
And but
nobody
you
did.
did. But Bruce, you did, and that's that. And that's all I'm
Hmm.
gonna say about that. But
And you riding to Vince's crusade this hard is not a good look when he's
it's super
getting
not.
investigated by the federal government for sex trafficking. Is that really what you want? Is that really the side of history you want to be on, Bruce?
And
Interesting.
and no, seriously. And also like I know he's been investigated by the feds before, but not like this, boo.
Not
It's
like
gonna be
this. No, no, no.
um
His company was investigated before. He is
yeah,
getting
oh yeah.
investigated now. Like,
Yes, really
I mean,
scary.
him and his company. WWE is not gonna get away with no repercussions. But
No, which also I will say, and we'll maybe get into this in a little bit, but it made me like feel second guessy and icky a little bit about Triple H and Stephanie.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like now I'm like really suspicious of them, and I it may we'll get into it when we get into the family stuff like
Hmm.
briefly, but like it made me I was like now I feel scared
Right.
about this. But they talk about Owen. This literally I was in tears about this because again, I
Mm.
know that Owen Hart dies a very tragic death, but I didn't know the like I didn't
The
even think
extent of
about
it.
God, and I did, and Brett got emotional at one point talking about how like after the Montreal Screwjob, like Owen was really like a calming force for him, and they show footage of them in the ring, and like
Hmm.
it was so sad, and like they basically make a mockery of Owen after Brett is gone, like make a mockery of his character and who he is. Like that's what kind of what they said is like
Hmm.
they reverted him back to that like bird character he was, and that was supposed to be the gig that he like flew in,
Right.
and I just they should have never continued that match. I'm sorry, I don't care. And they're like, well,
Oh,
the
the
audience
rest of
doesn't
the
know that.
show? Yeah.
Yes, the audience doesn't realize that he died,
Yeah,
so
all of
it's
it,
fine.
Vince during all of this, gross.
Gross.
Really gross.
Gross. I literally wrote in all caps, wrong. Just
Wrong.
wrong. You're wrong. And Brett was saying they literally wheeled Owen past wrestlers and then were simultaneously pushing them out and being like, you better get out there.
Crazy.
And there's just no reason for that. There's no and what really chilled me to the bone again, I knew that Owen died, but when Jerry gets on commentary and
Yeah.
he's
He's
out
like,
of character, he's like, it's not looking good. It
yeah,
doesn't look good. Chilled me to the bone.
right.
Because they could not pretend. They could not pretend. And how
No,
could you? Why would you? It's disturbing. It's horrible. That's like one of your friends.
right.
I just really, it was foul, just
Hmm.
absolutely foul. And we'll eventually watch the episode
Yeah,
on
we
After
will.
Dark about Owen. But
And the thing is crazy is like Vince's reasoning was like it happened during a blackout, so the crowd didn't see it, and it doesn't. I was like, it doesn't. You have
they're
a.
gonna know.
I was like, first of all, like, it was just crazy. First of all, like, you don't know that they didn't see. Just because they're in
Period.
a blackout does not, you don't know what those people like saw or didn't see. You didn't go out and ask, you didn't, whatever. And it's just a matter of it being an insanely poor taste to disrespect him in that way. Um,
Absolutely.
because the rest of the pay-per-view, Owen's blood is stained on
Ew.
the mat. Like they had to, all of his friends had to go out and wrestle on top of their dead friend's blood because their boss wanted the show to go on. Terrible. And we haven't
Foul.
watched the pay-per-view because we're not there yet chronologically, but I'm telling you, Undertaker, it is the most chilling thing I have ever seen. The Undertaker makes it to the ring and he's like taking all like he's getting help like taking off his jacket and he's like just staring like off into like the distance and you can tell like he has been crying. Like his eyes are red, like he's just staring off in the distance like I can't believe I have to do this right now, and just absolute insanity. It was just in shitty taste. Like why would you do
Absolutely.
that? um it's just like really you couldn't like just take the loss for one night. For one night you couldn't just
One night.
figure that out.
And it's not like it's something stupid. I'm
No.
sure people will understand. And that's the thing too. It's like he's saying nobody saw, but it's like, but they're gonna find out. Like
Right.
it's going to be news. They're going to know that somebody that Owen
Died in
Hart
front of them and
died
they didn't
in
even
front of you,
see it.
and then they carried on the show. Like they're gonna find out. So just whatever. It just I could talk about this all day. It just really disgusts me. There was no reason for it. I don't care what you say. You'll never convince me. The end.
Correct.
Period. Um, and someone had said to, like as if he would have, if it was his own son, like say his own son had died. Someone said like in the show, like if his own son had died, if he would continue the show. And it was so funny. My roommate and I were like, actually, probably yeah.
Yeah, no, and then Vin, they cut to
Knowing
Vince,
Vince,
and
I
he's like, if I had died in the middle of the ring, I would have wanted them to continue the show,
yes.
and
And
it's
someone's
like,
like, but if his own son, it's like, no, he would have. He would have let the
no,
show go
he
on if his own
absolutely
son had
would have,
died.
but
Absolutely.
it's also just like it's not about you.
Period. It's
I was
not.
like, someone died that works for you tonight. It's not about you.
It's
Like,
horrible. Yeah, it's horrible. And they talk about Chris Benoit, which we have talked to
three
death
episodes
about.
to go.
Three episodes. Whoa. So that's a whole thing. They talk about, handling CTE and obviously again we've talked about the whole like airing the tribute the same day they found out, even in the news coming in. You guys, again, you can watch those episodes.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. That's a
And the thing that's
whole
like
thing
crazy is I feel like they did this like that tribute because they didn't do one for
for Owen.
right. And like so this was them trying to like, make sure they didn't make the same mistake twice. But mind you, as the tribute show is going on, the
Information.
evening news is reporting on all of this like heinous things that they're like discovering. So like
Yeah.
I feel like they were trying to do the right thing. It just the timing was just so bad. like could not have been
Right.
worse.
And yeah, and we've said this before, but it's like you just don't ever imagine that that's like what happened. Like
Hmm.
you just don't ever imagine that it was a double homicide and suicide.
Right.
You just couldn't like so they hear that they're dead and they just kind of think they have to do what they have to do. Whatever. Again, we've talked about it, but that whole situation was really crazy. This next part, because Paul Heyman is in this, and you know what, you if you're not new here, you know I love Paul Heyman. You know Xavier loves Paul. We just love him here. And Paul
Paul and Steph are
Heyman,
like,
yes, I do know that. But there is a part I want to talk about this. There is a part where Paul is like whispering to Steph backstage and like is almost
mhm.
like trying to kind of tell her like, you know, your dad is like a psycho, right? Like
Well,
he doesn't say that. He says
he says
like
like, he's going to make it so that you're always in like opposition with him. Like you're always
you're
going to
always
be
going
in
to
a
be a
fight.
challenge. Like,
Mm.
yes. And she was like, haha, it sure feels that way. And I was like, girl, he was
And
trying
then
to
Paul's
be
literally
like,
like, come on. Like, no,
no,
no, no.
lit,
Like,
like,
don't make a joke. Like, come on.
and Paul's like, no, I'm trying to hold your hand and take you to enlightenment, girl.
Right.
Like this is like he really tried to tell her like
Hmm.
crazy. But Paul has this is where Paul the way he shoots, he scores.
He
He
said,
said
oh yeah, go ahead.
he
If this
said
is what I think it is.
the Vince is a product of his abuse. That
Hmm.
part.
Yeah,
Vince, he says, I don't have like the whole quote, but he literally says like Vince is a product of his abuse. He's spent his entire life trying to get back the control that he did not have in his first 12 years of life. He's spent
correct.
his entire life trying to seize the power that was taken from him when he was a child. And
Correct.
it's just it's completely I think he says even later something like um Vince doesn't own WWE, WWE owns Vince
Correct.
because it's just like it's this
He
insane
calls it the only monogamous relationship that
relationship.
Vince McMahon has ever had is with his company. Um,
It's
yeah.
crazy. Um and that's Paul, girl. I
Hmm.
mean, he's never going to tell a lie as far as I know. And
Oh,
maybe I'll be proven wrong in I mean, yes, he will. Absolutely.
I
Never
was like,
mind.
ask
I take
anybody
that
that
back.
used to work at ECW. They'll
I
tell
take
you
that
he was a
back. I'm
big fat liar.
sorry. I'm sorry. I was thinking about this though. Well, never mind. That's like a real
Hmm.
tangent about, but yes, I know Paul has many, 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 many faults. But in this moment, I was like, wow, I mean, that is a shoot. Then they get into the Steph McMahon of it all, the way that the like the drugging, the assault, the like all of that that they do, like
Oh, like the Triple H storyline situation?
yes, is
Gross.
so gross. And there's one part that really, really, really disgusted me is like, because she did a lot of crazy stuff. Like there, I mean, and again, women at the time, they showed so many clips, like the bra and panty matches, like women just getting their clothes ripped off, like the whole storyline with Trish,
Right.
like barking like a dog. Like if you really mean it to me, like get on your knees and bark like a dog, like
Hmm.
disgusting. But what really disturbed me is the interviewer asked at one point to Stephanie, like, were there any storylines Vince pitched that you absolutely refused to do? And she goes, yeah. And they're like, what was one of them? And she goes, oh no, like I'm not gonna say. And they cut to Vince and he goes, so one of them was Steph was going to say she was pregnant, but she wasn't sure if it was mine or not.
And then immediately he has to go like, my character. And you're like, ew, ew, ew,
I
ew.
shaking,
Either
literally
way,
shaking.
character or not, you're still her father. You're
You're
still
her.
her. You are her flesh and blood father. And even if you wanted to like hide under the guise of the character Stephanie McMahon is still the daughter of the
Of Mr.
character
McMahon.
Mr. McMahon. So either way you shake it, that is the most absurd, messed up, gross thing I've ever
Disgusting.
heard pitched as a wrestling idea. Like, get a grip. Like, you are disgusting. Like, you are
Pitch to
foul.
your daughter. Your daughter. And I was like, again, this is some weird sick trauma that you have to play out and like what I
So crazy. And the crazy thing is like they asked Stephanie, they were like, did you ever think it was weird that it was your father asking you to like do these things? And she was like, yeah, I guess so. And it's just I feel like they are so conditioned to just be like,
Oh,
move,
absolutely.
move. Even there's a quote from Vince that's like, whatever you have, like whatever happened to you, or like your life, like throw it the fuck back there and go forward. This man doesn't deal with anything. He does
Nope.
not. He is just constantly on to the next thing. This man has never processed anything in his life as far as trauma or or any of his actions or consequences because he hasn't had any consequences.
No, none. And I think that like the Shane and Stephanie have more trauma than I could possibly even imagine. And I remember a bunch of the wrestlers said too, like it's like he intentionally tried to make it hard for them to be successful. And he
Right.
said, I didn't want Nepo babies like my kid, like they were going to work for everything that they had the way that I did and blah, blah, blah.
And I can
But also,
understand that.
yes,
I can
absolutely.
understand you not wanting to have like spoiled children. Sure, make them work, do the jobs,
Yep, yep,
work
yep,
their
yep.
way out by all means.
Period.
But
Not
the
that.
way it was expressed was you were so harsh on them, more so than anybody else. And it's just like, how did you think that was going to like work out in your favor?
Swear
And
to,
we
I mean,
clearly see that like it just built a crazy resentment between Shane and Vince.
no, period. And the way that Shane is like, what ended up happening is that Shane is borderline about to kill himself for you just for good television for the business.
Right.
Like, that's what it's giving.
Right.
Like, and that is psycho. And I will say, like, I really do hope, like, not to be like hokey about it, but like, I really do hope they're going to therapy or something because
Hmm.
Shane has three boys of his own now, and he seems like, hey, you guys want to come out with me to like when they do that whole storyline where Shane comes back and like it's the father versus son and la 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 like, and he seems like he's maybe doing a better job. Like I don't know, but it's like,
Right. From the
oh,
snippet that we have seen, yes.
we have seen from that tiny, 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 tiny example, but like, God, that is years of like unimaginable trauma that is being played out on one of the most popular television shows at the time. And I
Hmm.
just don't know how you ever recover from that or ever even be a little bit normal. Like, I don't even know. And so that's why I was like,
Normal is out of the question for them.
absolutely. And like that's why I was kind of like it made me feel like icky a little bit about Stephanie and Triple H just because even I think Tony Atlas was like Shane never had it in him to run the business because he just is nice. He's a good person. And when people see that they'll like take advantage or he said something like that but he's like but Stephanie no one is getting over on her. No one is taking advantage of her. Like that woman is just like her father. And that freaked me out. I was like
Mm.
in what way? Like
Mm.
it's and again, it's like you to
But I
me, it's
also it makes me question because of the final episode and like Stephanie's timeline of everything. In terms
mm,
of like she leaves or she Vince leaves
oh,
the
yep,
first time. She ends up being co-CEO for a little bit.
mm-hmm,
He comes back. She leaves.
yep,
He um oh wait, yeah, yeah. He comes back, she leaves, he
mm-hmm,
gets pushed out, and we
mm-hmm.
don't see her again until WrestleMania 40 or
That's when we saw
the
her
Hall
again
of
the first
Fame.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the first time
It
we'd
was a
seen
big
her.
the first it was having Steph out there was like a big deal because it was the first time she'd like shown face after all of the Vince allegations and whatnot.
Oh, in the ECW hat, no less.
Right. And but my thing is like I don't know what that relationship is, but that timeline, very weird.
Very weird. And yeah, you're so right. That very fishy, very suspect. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So also I want to mention Sable, the Sable storyline really briefly. Like
Yes.
Sable suing. She basically this was so crazy. Sable sued for sexual harassment. And we know we're getting into this era where she's like, the it girl. She's like the blonde bombshell. She's naked,
Right.
whatever. She sues for sexual assault allegations. She leaves, she left the company. I don't remember what happens if they settle, if whatever. I think that they do.
I think
But
so.
the gag is she comes back.
Yes.
This scared me to death.
And the thing that was like really weird about it is they ask Vince about like an on-screen like affair with Sable, and just go back and watch his response. Something flashes like before his eyes, like some memory, some whatever. There's like a weird, creepy smile, and then he like goes and answers the question. Just go back and watch it. It's creepy. Because that I don't know. It's just weird. That whole situation was weird. Why, like that she came back and came back to be very much so put in very similar situations. Um,
Absolutely. She came back to be Stephanie's secretary, and her comeback was her just like lounging on the desk, basically naked.
right.
Like,
Um,
and they're talking about her as if she's not there. Like Stephanie's like yelling in Vince McMahon's face, like, this is the whore that sued us and like for
right,
sexual assault. Like they literally said that.
right.
And
On
she's just
TV.
lounging on the desk, like she's just not. And I was literally like, blink twice if you are in there, girl. Like,
Yeah.
it was so scary to me.
Mm-mm.
Freaked
Yeah.
me
Very
out.
weird. Very weird.
And when they mentioned the Playboy interview, I have to find this because it disturbed me. One of the quotes was, um, like they point blank ask him, like, have you had an affair? And he's like, yes. And they're like, do you like feel any type of way about it? And he literally goes, the sex was terrific, but from an emotional standpoint, I regret it. Why
Right.
would you even, and it's, they asked
In
him like,
writing.
why were you so in writing, they were like, why were you so candid in an interview? He goes, well, they were asking me a question and I decided to be honest about it. Like, what?
Oh, now you decided? Every other time we just say things just to say things, even if it's
Like,
not what we mean, but during a Playboy interview, because it's time for you to be a brochacho, you're like, oh yeah, I did
not
that.
no.
Ugh,
Just
gross.
like literally the sex was terrific, but from an emotional standpoint, I regret it.
Right.
You
Weird.
are just disturbed. Also, not the football league.
Oh,
Not
the
the football
XFL?
league.
Yeah, that was a weird thing.
That was a weird foray. And the way he gets so mad at that interviewer when they're like, okay, it was a flop Tina Marie. Like what was the deal with that? And he like gets in his face and
Vince
he's like,
cannot handle, like, he can't handle it. Like, I don't know. And the thing is, like, there have been multiple interviews throughout the like this that they
yes.
show where
Yep.
he gets like physical with the interviewers. And I'm like, you can't
Yeah.
just do that. This isn't your show. Like,
Yep.
crazy. Absolute
Mm-mm.
insanity. Um, so nuts. So
And
nuts.
and
Oh,
this
and
is
then they go
also,
into the WWF lawsuit between the World
oh yeah.
Wildlife Fund.
Yeah, which is kind of silly to be honest, but
Mhm.
um this episode ends with Paul talking about because obviously they get into the whole Shane thing, and Shane is literally like, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning where he's like, yeah, I finally got a hug from my dad that day and that made me feel good. It was like I he goes, it was literally, we actually hugged for a decent amount of time. There were even pats on the back, like so
The way that he was like, yeah,
starved for affection, this poor child.
right.
Anyway, Paul ends it with talking about this story about Shane and Vincent. Like Shane had pitched Vince an idea, and like Vince is like they get into it and he's like, over my dead body. Here. And he like opens his chest, he goes and like gives him a knife or something and is
Yeah,
like,
Vince
just
was
stab.
eating,
Yeah.
apparently, and he hands Shane a knife and is like, "Oh, like right here. Go ahead." If he's like, "That is never going to happen while I'm still alive. So if you
So
want it that badly, go ahead, right here." And then he goes on to say the craziest thing, and he's like, "And if you're not man enough to stick it right here, I'll take that into consideration as well." And like you're like, "That's crazy." Like that
so do
is
you like
nuts. Like what is he supposed to do with that? His father is literally telling him to stab him uh for to get an idea over or whatever. Or and if he doesn't do it, then he's not man enough. Like
girl,
that's no
dark,
wonder. Like no
scary.
wonder.
And again, this is a meeting of creatives. So there were like, Paul was there, so Bruce was there, Pat was there. Like there were people witnessing this.
Right.
and that's one instance of something completely insane. So I'm like, I'm just saying, like, I know y'all know what you know,
Right.
whatever.
So
And
crazy.
then the last episode is called The Finish. It gets into a lot of uh Donald Trump and Vince being
Buddy
compadres, which
buddies.
of course I'm not
Yeah.
shocked. I'm not even gonna even say anything about it.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, Linda had a position in his cabinet, and then they sent Hulk Hogan to go speak at the Republican National Convention this year.
which
So it's
we
they
know.
Vince or Trump is and they even say it. It was like the like pro wrestleification of like politics. I was like, no, yeah, that's what it is.
And
What
honestly,
he does is a pro wrestling playbook. Like that is it. Like that there is
he's
no if, ands, or buts about it. He's out here doing wrestling promos.
no, and it's crazy when they put it. I actually loved that they did that because I was like, that is fascinating. Everything
Yeah,
is wrestling.
everything is
Everything
wrestling.
is wrestling. I was like, that is when you put it like that, and they were putting like heel speech, like promos next to things like Donald Trump actually said. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God. It's like,
That's why like I
wait,
can't take any of it like serious. I'm just like, I've heard this. I've
I've seen
clocked
this. I've
this.
lived, yeah. No,
Yeah.
period. Um, Also, they ask him Vince something about because I really took like basic ass notes, but saying he didn't feel bad. They were talking about like the premature deaths of wrestlers and why they were all
hmm
dying so young and la la la. And literally Vince was like, I don't feel bad about anything because they took those drugs recreationally for fun. And I was like, that is so far from the truth. Like, I'm not too
So
far from the
far
truth.
from the
Like,
truth.
I'm sure some people took drugs recreationally. They're taking drugs, and you guys know this, but they're taking drugs because they are afraid to not work, that they'll lose their spot. They are working through excruciating pain, through injuries, so they don't lose their job. So they're taking somas, they're taking like muscle relaxants, they're taking steroids, they're taking all kinds of shit so that they can work, not so they can party and have a good time, even though I'm sure there was an element of that.
Right.
Saying you don't feel bad at all because it was just they were just recreational la-di-da is psycho. You are
Psycho.
delusional if you, and I know you don't think that's true, again, because you already said you just say shit you don't mean,
Right.
but that is crazy.
Right. Yeah. It's the what's the complete like just lack of like the flippant lack of responsibility for anything that goes on in his own company. It's just so crazy. It's just like what like these people work for you. They like
Yes.
and it's not even like it's not like a normal job where they work for you 9 to 5 like they work for you
Yep.
365. They
Yep.
travel the world for you. They leave their families for you. Like that's crazy. And like to just be like, "Oh, I believe at one point he goes, I carry zero responsibility. Zero." And you're like, "None? No, you don't feel anything."
Yeah. And what's the gag about that is that it's so contradictory because it's like, okay, you are saying you are the man, you are in control, you are the powerful dynamic in this company, and yet you were like, no, I don't know anything about that. That was recreational.
hmm
Like you actually had no control over the situation. Like the contradictory nature of it again is like, I am manipulating this story to however it will benefit me. Like in
Right.
1 minute, I'm the one that's in control of everything. I know about everything. I am the overseer. I know and then
Right.
the other thing is I had no control over that. It's recreational, silly
Right.
goose, not
But
like,
that is just typically what it is. It's like
yeah,
when things are going great, I did that, I made that decision, it was my idea, blah blah blah. Shit hits the fan, it's plausible deniability. Oh, I don't know, like they were doing what they were doing on their own time and blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, sure. Sure.
right.
Do not
Yeah.
pretend like you are not like the micromanager like supreme and have no idea what's going on with these people.
Yeah.
Don't,
You're
what is that?
again, willful ignorance, my least favorite type. Also it was super weird to me, and again, these interviews, a lot of them took place before the sexual allegations came out, although again, it's like I know that a lot of you know, so it makes it like extra uncomfortable. Um how almost every single wrestler, this was another one of those like hard cuts of everyone saying that Vince was like a father figure to them,
Mm-hmm.
but he couldn't even be a father figure to his own actual son.
Correct.
His own actual, because the way they did is they did the Shane storyline about how Shane is like literally starved for affection from his father, and then they did this right after. It was so smart. And they're literally like, Vince is like, yeah, no, he's like a father figure to me. I would consider Vince a father figure to me. Vince, wow, he did so much for me. He's basically like a father figure to me. And it's like, first of all, we need a new generation of fathers if that's the case, because
Right.
it's really making me.
That's your
The
North Star? Jesus.
Jesus, my God. Good fathers, please step up and sound off. I am so tired. I am so
So
exhausted.
tired.
I really need, and I know they're out there, but my God,
Mm-hmm.
we need some help out here. Jesus Lord, because the way that he's not even a father to his own son, and you're all watching it play out in real time, and then claiming that this man is your father figure is actually really upsetting to me. Like,
Right.
really upset. You are wrestling alongside his own son who is jumping off of like 50-foot high whatevers to please his dad. And you're like, Vince, it was basically my dad.
Right.
Y'all need a therapist, a psychiatrist, and a new lease on life. I'm
Right.
so sorry. And I don't say that disrespectfully, because I can't imagine that era and working in that era. I mean this with the most respect. That is crazy.
That is crazy.
And I am curious to see what happens in the aftermath of this documentary, like really, because people are gonna see that, the people who
Mm-hmm.
did it, and are gonna be like, oh, okay, well, I said that, and maybe
Right.
I actually felt that way, or maybe I didn't, but I have to reckon with the fact that I said it and what the outcome
Right.
is for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Also, I wrote in all caps mustache OMSG because when
Oh,
Vince does that
Vince?
interview,
He really like looks evil. Like he really like
evil.
all of these things like started happening and then all of a sudden he looked like a cartoon villain. Like and we're just like the dye job, the skinny mustache, the fact that like
No.
he's aging like milk and it's just like, I was yeah, it's bad.
So scary. And that's when they kind of get into the Janelle Grant lawsuit, which we've talked about before. But the Janelle Grant lawsuit came up. It is extremely disturbing. I'm sure all
Very
of you guys
graphic.
know
Yeah.
about it. It's extremely graphic. I remember Xavier was reading me the text, and I was floored. And even Schumacher says, he goes, I knew that there were a lot of skeletons in that closet, and so I was expecting the worst, and even I was shocked.
Right.
Shocked. And there was a woman she might have been from the Wall Street Journal also, I can't remember, but she was the one that got the lead and was like, I actually knew for a fact that WWE did not see this coming at all. Like they
Yeah.
had no idea that this was on the docket, that this was gonna be coming for them, and they had to really figure it
Pivot.
out
Mm-hmm.
quick. Um, which, as we know, I mean, is the WWE specialty, but this is like, I
Right.
mean,
It
God bless Janelle Grant, seriously. Like I really, I'm not a religious person, but some I don't even know the words for that. But then they talk about I didn't know about this, Ashley Massaro, and how
yeah.
that chilled me also.
Mm-hmm.
So that she had come out with sexual assault allegations, nothing ever
While
came of
on
it.
tour and like they just basically didn't believe her,
Didn't believe her.
didn't do anything about it, didn't report it. And then basically we're like, oh no, we didn't know about that. Had we known, we would have reported it. And that's
Yeah.
so crazy.
And she killed herself.
Yeah.
Allegedly. There was the cause of death is apparent suicide. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just, and again, you hear all these stories about, like, again, the other woman that got paid with the settlement, Janelle Monae, oh my God, Janelle Grant, like all these things. Like, okay, so maybe you know what I'm saying? It's like, so there was definitely an element of truth there. Like,
Oh, 100%. You
I,
had to pay like Rita Marie, you had to pay four women in 2023, and now you're getting fucking federally investigated in 2024. Like maybe, maybe the guy's a rapist. I don't know. Like
uh,
maybe if like 400 women are coming out of the woodwork to be like, hey, this happened and has been happening, And like all of the, we have so many examples to point out. Even if you just look at TV, like look at it, and like all of it's just under the guise of like, oh, like it's a character. Okay, sure. But you, the man, has to write, approve, and like plan out and put it on TV. I was like, don't
Mm-hmm.
make, you know what I mean? Like this, like, oh, like this separation of like, it's a character. Weak sauce, Vince. Weak sauce.
Weak.
Nobody believes you. Nobody believes that as a plausible anything. You make the decisions and carry them out. You are responsible always. You're the guy in your company. You're
Mm-hmm.
responsible for what happens in your company. Like,
Mm-hmm. Again, it's the control thing. It's like, are you in control or aren't you in control? Because like you're trying to sell any story that just makes you like not the villain when you are so obviously the villain. It's even character, and you literally say like you don't it's you, but like the dial's turned up. So like even if
yeah, but even like he goes and asks, like, what there's a quote. He's like, what is the similarities between you and Mr. McMahon? And he goes, none whatsoever.
like again, it's just he tells on himself over and over again where it's like you are literally saying contradictory things
Yes.
within the same interview.
Right.
Within the same interview. It's so crazy. I just cannot even fathom how anyone takes anything he says seriously at this point. I just
Mhm.
can't even get there in my brain. And I know that like I don't have, and you don't either. So I know that like that's fine. I don't have nostalgia goggles about him at all because
Yeah.
I'm experiencing it at this stage in the game. So I am
Hmm.
seeing it all in 2020 vision, allegedly, like
Hmm.
in hindsight, like all of this stuff we're
Right.
experiencing again. I don't have nostalgia goggles about him. I don't have to reckon with the fact that this person, but I'm just saying, like, even Mr. McMahon as a character, like, I know we're about to get into that, and I know that it's a lot of it is going to make me like really uncomfortable. And I know even then it would have also. I just
Right.
know that. I just know that. Like, I'm sorry, and you can say it was a different time, it was a different whatever, and I know that like there was a lot of sexism on TV, there was a lot of crazy blood, gore, violence, but I don't there is no scenario I could ever picture myself enjoying watching something like that that is so overtly violent and like sexually
Sexually violent.
violent towards
Right.
women
Hmm.
and even men. Like I don't know everybody. It's just
Right.
like I don't know. And so I don't feel that way. Whereas like he was pioneering television. Like I know that WWE was very popular at the time, and I know that
No,
we're
but
gonna get
even
into it.
then, like
But
he
even
very much
then,
so, and even then, this is again like not taking responsibility. He's like, oh, well, we just followed the trends. Like, and you're like, oh, okay, okay.
yeah,
Like, and but the
right.
thing is, like, that is a choice to do. Like, you
Right.
don't have to. No, you are.
Right.
This is a free enterprise. You don't have to. Like,
And I think Triple H is the one that says it like who's worse, the guy that does it or the guy that enjoys it.
mhm.
And it is like really like it makes you feel some type of way to watch the reaction from the crowd, like how happy, excited, how much they
Mhm.
enjoy it, how much and obviously their demographic is like 90 something percent men, but there were
Right.
women in the audience
Mhm.
because I was looking. I was like, I
Right.
have to see what the women are doing in this audience.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not trying to be on my soapbox or anything like that, but it's just like I just feel like I always say this, use the test to take the test. I think the answers are all right in front of you if you just look. And some
Right.
people just don't want to look. Again, willful ignorance, but um I think it's interesting that the legacy question kind of towards the end, they're all like, what's Vince McMahon's legacy? And
And everyone sputtered.
nobody can answer.
Everyone
And
sputtered.
I said this to Crystal when we were watching. I was like, part of me is like, is it that moment of, okay, we're right now in this moment, in the moment they're doing the documentary, they're like, okay, we're supposed to be doing this documentary about Vince. There's no, the allegations haven't come out, blah, blah, blah. I was like, so they're supposed to be saying like maybe sort of complimentary things about Vince because it's a Vince McMahon documentary. But I'm like, but do all of them know deep down that like maybe eventually the truth will out? Like, because they know some stuff, they've definitely heard some stuff, they whatever, like, and they're hesitating like how to say
Well, there's been a
it.
lot. There's already
Well,
like there's
right. There's
like
already
even up to
stuff.
like now, there's so many documented things that have happened. So it's not like you know, it's not like you don't know. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
It's
But
it's weird, and
I find it very telling that like
no one
nobody could come up with
had an answer.
a yeah. Um
Even Vince couldn't
because
didn't
it's
have an answer.
so because it's so complicated. Because it's like again, it's that thing where it's like, yes, he gave us this thing that we all super love and enjoy, but he's terrible. And like
Hmm.
and what you know what I mean? When you're talking about like a legacy, like what you can't ignore either. Do you know what I
Correct.
mean?
Hmm. It's
So
so true. And I do, before I forget, because I voice memoed Xavier this morning about this, before I forget, I definitely want to mention this. Oh, sorry. I'm smacking things. Um, I literally, again, watched this until like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then my first thought when I woke up this morning was, wait a minute. So, because Brock Lesnar is allegedly implicated in the documents concerning Janelle.
Janelle Grant. Hmm.
Janelle Grant, and where basically she was a part of him re-signing the contract, where it was like if he re-signs his contract with WWE, he can have his way with her
This is the
whenever.
human trafficking part of the human trafficking lawsuit.
Correct. And Brock Lesnar is allegedly the person that they are discussing.
Hmm.
And I made the connection this morning, and I don't know why I didn't last night, but literally I woke up and I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. My eye just started twitching, by the way. I was like, Undertaker had the WWE WrestleMania winning streak of like 20, wasn't like 21 WrestleManias
21, yeah.
he had been undefeated. And the day of that he was supposed to fight Brock Lesnar, the day of, Vince calls him and is like, oh, by the way, just kidding. We're going to put Brock over tonight
Hmm.
and you're going to lose to Brock Lesnar. And I was like, I don't know. I literally said to Xavier, like, something is fishy about
I
that, where
don't
it's like,
know if it that has anything to do with anything. I think
I
you might just
know,
be
but it
really
just
reaching, but
But it's
um
not reaching. I'm just saying, like, obviously there was something there. There's definitely, I don't know if it was like a camaraderie or if it's like like Vince was like, yeah, like there's something about this guy. And I'm saying maybe if Brock Lesnar is somehow involved in this, like I could see it, is all I'm saying. Is
mhm.
like special privileges,
Oh, well,
weird
yeah, yeah, yeah,
kind of,
yeah, yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
And the thing is, like, the whole like Janelle being like dangled was part of his like trying to get the WWE was trying to get Brock to re-sign for another
Right.
X amount of years,
Right,
which
right,
is
right.
just absolutely insane. And then mind you, like I don't know if they hold on. Brock Lesnar was married to Sable. Like
Yep.
I am checking right now. Uh
Yeah, because you texted me that this morning and I was like, excuse me?
yeah, they're
He
still
was?
together. They are still together
Girl, no. When did they get married?
in 2006.
No.
So it had to have been during her second return
Run.
because Lesnar premiered in 2000. He came in at like 2002 and then was there until like 2004 or 5. Leaves, doesn't come back for another like 10 years, does his UFC thing and then comes back. But yeah, they're still married. Like this is still going
That is
on.
so crazy. That is so crazy.
Right.
But the series ends with basically Vin saying like, "Oh, I don't know, like sometimes I don't know like which is the character and which is me."
Which is crazy because you just said there
Which
was
is
no
but
difference. There was no similarities whatsoever, quote unquote.
I feel so many things. I literally, you guys are so lucky I didn't just come in here with like a cigarette and a stiff drink. I was suffering
Honestly,
today. I was literally like,
reeling. You're that
um,
Ben Affleck meme of him like smoking the cigarette outside, just like
that. And again, once again, I've been him many times. I am Charlie from It's Always Sunny with the red lines and the
yeah.
cigarette. Just like, but if Brock wanted him to get over, and like I'm going
Hmm.
crazy. Like literally, my dreams were making connections I couldn't in my waking reality, and I got like I texted Xavier today too because like I said, my roommate had watched the whole thing with me, and she texts me in the middle of the day and goes, Vince McMahon is haunting me today. And I go, Mama, he's haunting me.
He's haunting
He's
us all.
haunting me today. And I wasn't even there. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm so curious in a morbid way, and I know that it's sick and twisted, like what the fallout is going to be from this,
Mm-hmm.
from the investigation, from everything, because like what other, like these are horrible skeletons, and it makes me always wonder about the ones that are buried under those. Like when you pull those skeletons out, what
What
else is
false?
there?
Right.
Like I am so, it just, and I hate that, and I understand like how people feel, like again, ignorance is bliss, and like sometimes you just don't want to see behind the curtain, but it's because it makes me question things, because also then I'm doing the psycho thing where I'm being a conspiracy theorist, and I'm like, okay, but like did they just show us this because they're like, okay, this is the evil man that now we're like removing, and like WWE is gonna like
Right.
go into this new era and it's gonna be better, and everything has been good since he left, and la la la, because there was also that part where they were asking, like they asked Hulk and they asked whoever, like, oh, do you think that the WWE will still be intact if Vince McMahon were to ever leave? And so many of them were like, no, there's no way. Vince
And it's
McMahon, or
thriving.
the, and it's thriving, and it's
It
thriving.
is quite literally doing better than it ever
Ever
has.
has. A WrestleMania, they mentioned WrestleMania 40 was the biggest WrestleMania they have ever had.
And
And
by every
every
measure,
metric,
ticket sales,
and
like
merch,
ratings,
yes.
merch, all of it.
So it's just, this is really crazy to come off of, especially the same year as WrestleMania 40, for this documentary to come out while there is this humongous regime change, sort
Right.
of, because
No, very
also,
much so.
you know, it just leaves so many more questions. I'm so curious as to what's going to happen, because if anything I've learned in this life, and the truth will out. I mean, maybe not always, but a lot of the time, and
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're a big corporate company like this, a big face like this, where you have advertised your life on television for so many years, you can't imagine. Like, of course, people were going to take a second look and be like, this is kind of weird. Like,
Right.
something is up here.
Right.
And I am just so curious as to how this is going to go. And yeah, like please, like if you guys watch, let us know your thoughts. I'm so
Please,
curious
please,
what other
please.
people
Yeah.
are gonna say. I'm gonna be on these internets going crazy.
Amen. Amen.
And if you guys, again, if you want us to deep dive, we will, because I definitely will. There's a lot more I feel like I have to say. Do you have any, well, not today, but do you have any final comments, final remarks?
Well, this was certainly a ride and a half. I am thankful that you at least had a little bit of a background before
Yeah,
getting
same.
into all of this, because that would have been truly
Hard.
insane to
I
follow.
don't know what I would have done. If I
Yeah.
found out about the steroid trials, Chris Benoit, the
Owen.
Montreal Screwjob, Owen, all in one. Oh my God.
When
I
you
don't know
list
if I
them,
would have
you're
made
like,
it.
wow, there's a lot of really big red flags
Material. The
here.
sexual allegations, Sable, Janelle, Rita, like
Right.
I don't know if I would have made it, I'll be honest.
Very true. Very
Even
true.
finding out about Stephanie and Shane, their storylines, the McMahon family. Again,
Crazy.
I'm kind of glad I have a cushion of info to move
Hmm.
forward with, because otherwise I don't know if I would have made it. But yeah, I'm agree. I'm very
Hmm.
grateful for your
Uh,
education.
oh,
But
thanks.
yeah, so again, let us know your thoughts. We love you all so much. Thank you for taking this journey with us. It was the doozy. We love you all. And we'll see you on the next one.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.